Welcome to Maroon Cloth. I'm your host, Alan Dorleen. It's the first episode. Just gonna try some things out. So, the Maroons were escaped slaves who developed settlements outside of the colonial society. They fought back against their oppressors, their kidnappers, the Europeans, be it in Haiti, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, and other islands. They fought back against the Spanish, the English or British, and the French, and they retaught themselves how to survive. They taught themselves how to fight several aspects of guerrilla warfare. So that's the platform I'm on, you know what I'm saying? Maroon Cloth. So throughout this journey, I'm going to be learning better ways to survive, and I'm going to be passing along certain keys for people who want to pick them up and unlock certain doors. That's what I'm here for. That's what we're all here for, to learn from each other, to intuit certain things, to interact with each other, you know? So the reason I've reformatted my podcast is because, when George Floyd died, that was a huge moment. Everybody was inside the house, and all of a sudden, it seemed everybody poured out into the streets. Some people were very angry. They were rioting. There were a lot of people there who were just, they were protesting. Some people were just looting. Some people didn't really have an emotional connection to what happened at all. But especially in this Corona world, the Corona rising, it's a powder keg. So think I think common sense said that something like this was inevitable, especially with a lot of the government, shutting down. So what happened. I took time off. I wasn't really feeling it, because the reality of being black in this country is you kind of live with it. You don't have to embrace it or collect knowledge of this person died or that person died. It's just this understanding that the world, they look at you a certain way, and they're going to try to put you down in certain ways, and sometimes that leads to homicide, murder. These cops be murderers out here, man. So that's why I'm trying to bring out these keys, because black people need to connect to more archetypes. We need to stop succumbing to the stereotypes that are projected on us. We need to stop being fearful because people are telling us that we should be fearful. We have to embrace our autonomy and our king and queenship and our godship, and we have to be able to harness that power to make the most out of our lives and out of our destinies. We're here for a purpose, and we need to be able to embrace that purpose and not worry about what this person's saying or what that person's saying. Speech talk is cheap. Speech, it's an invention everybody has access to. Just because somebody's saying something doesn't mean it's true. If you can't take anything if you can't take anything constructive from it, just leave it alone. You should always be trying to build yourself and tear down the weaker parts of yourself too. So, you know, like I said, I think that black people need to connect more to certain positive archetypes, because during our tenure in the Western Hemisphere, as people who come from kidnapping and slavery, rape, robbery, murder, trauma, people who suffer constantly during our indoctrination by the education system, we're only taught about ourselves as existing within the parameters of an ahistorical Eurocentric context. And I say ahistorical because it doesn't tell the entire story, it only tells it from one perspective. So anything that's centered on one group of people and doesn't deal from the perspective of the other people is ahistorical, from my perspective at least. So this entire time, there's been an unbroken chain of inculcation that benefits white supremacist thought and the advancement of colonialist power structure. So you're taught to think in ways. You see this You see this when you have football players, basketball players, African American football players, basketball players, and in order to go on to the league, they have to be what's called coachable. And to be coachable means that you're basically gonna take everything that they tell you to take, and you're not gonna talk back. You're not gonna, they basically they take these warriors, these gladiators of our times, physically specimens, these giants, and they make them subservient and docile, and make sure that they don't say anything and ruffle anybody's feathers or say something scandalous or controversial, and you see it in the league. They get punished for it. There's a huge like plantation type template in that aspect, and you see certain people try to break out of it, like Colin Kaepernick when he took that knee, and then ironically George Floyd died, with the knee on his neck. Now they want to include Kaepernick in Madden 21 or whatever, Um, the hypocrisy is there. The NFL, whoever, apologized shortly after the George Floyd. He apologized to Colin Kaepernick and all that. Is a bunch of hypocrisy. You can't really go for all that. I don't think. Because you just taught about yourself in a very confined, limited context of, okay, you came here on a slave ship, and then Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King, and that's basically about it. Other than that, 98% of what a lot of people are taught in these school systems, I know I was taught, is about the things that some racist Europeans did in the past. And it conflicts with your soul at a certain point because, well, I'm not European. So what does that have to do with me other than from me thinking from a captor's perspective? And how can I hope to be autonomous or self-actualized if I'm trained to think from the perspective of a captor, of a captive, not a captor, a captive. You know what I'm saying? So you got to break out of that mentality, but first you have to acknowledge it. You know, you have all these rights. Well, where's your right to coexist as a boss? Why don't they teach you about your right to express your dominance? Why is none of that emphasized in the school system? I think it's important for young children to know that, but I think it's important for grown adults to know that too, because different people are at different points in their evolution and the revelations that they receive. So I'm just going to spit whatever game, and if it sticks, it sticks. You know what I mean? Because even the media does a job of portraying us as being weak, and the agendas are constantly pushed on us. We have a habit of playing to political parties with appointed schemes that don't work to benefit us. Where's your right to withhold your vote? Where's your right to demand change? Why is there pride in living up to an expectation of participating in a systemic practice that has repeatedly demonstrated its inability and unwillingness to acknowledge and remedy the plight of black people, your plight? When it's time to vote, that's the only time they appeal to your autonomy, and they use that opportunity to manipulate your ingrained sense of loyalty to a paradigm that is consistently and continually disloyal to you. They never care about your input when it comes to anything, except they want you to physically go to those polls and vote Democrat. That's it. You know what I'm saying? And you're gonna give them the vote. You're gonna give them the vote out of habit, out of some twisted sense of patriotism that you feel that by default you're just supposed to have to be an adult citizen. We should be able to demand certain things before we give anybody our vote, if you're gonna vote. So on the topic of autonomy, you have, rest in peace to Chadwick Boseman. He exemplifies a person who used his status and platform to portray black people, black archetypes in meaningful and bold ways. He portrayed Jackie Robinson, the first African American player in the MLB. He portrayed Thurgood Marshall, the first African American Supreme Court justice, the Godfather of Soul, James Brown, and these are the most notable ones. He also portrayed he portrayed the Black Panther, T'Challa, the King of Wakanda. And the thing about the Black Panther is he was more of a euphemism for black inclusion in the 1960s. Stan Lee created him when, the realm of comics was wildly white dominated. And Chadwick Boseman portrayed the Black Panther with style, substance, and dignity. You know what I'm saying? So one of the most liked characters because of the powerful performance of Chadwick Boseman. And Chadwick also he turned down roles that reinforced negative stereotypes. So he wasn't doing anything that was like he's strung out on drugs, or he's a deadbeat dad, or he's an abusive husband or something like that, or baby daddy or something. He wasn't doing all that. And most profoundly of all, he did a lot of this while suffering silently with colon cancer, which is just it's crazy. A lot of people, you know how the internet is. The internet is just bare. A lot of times it's bare. I don't know. It's a reflection of people's own insecurities. A lot of time, it's a reflection of id. Sometimes it can just be very ugly. When you look in those comment sections, when you look at those chat rooms and stuff like that, it can be constructive sometimes, but a lot of times it's going to be disorderly, chaotic, and pretty ugly. So people were talking about him because he had lost weight. He came off the Black Panther. People weren't expecting him to look the way that he did, but they probably didn't say it. They probably didn't express any type of concern. It was more like, an opportunity to kick somebody while they're down. Of course, the world not knowing that he was suffering from colon cancer and dying. And because he did all of it, privately, which is really unheard of. Like somebody in all these prominent movie roles, he was able to die with dignity because he wasn't looking for pity. He didn't tell the world, look, man, I'm dying of colon cancer. I can't. He still went out and did these movie roles. He was working on Black Panther, End Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame while he was suffering with cancer. And other films too, you know what I mean? But Nas's album dropped last month. It was called King's Disease. Nas talked about the King's Disease, gout. You know what I'm saying? And the King's Disease, it just relates to like I said, it's gout. It just relates to excess, gluttony, greed. You have so much and you eat so much, it makes you physically ill. You know what I mean? And it's called the King's Disease because the king had the most access to these resources, namely food. So a lot of times these kings, you know what I mean, just they would get fat, big and fat. That's why it's called King's Disease, because they would just get fat eating while everybody else who wasn't a king didn't get that disease because they weren't eating like that. Like even today, you say, somebody's eating good. You know what I'm saying? If they start putting on a few pounds, you're eating good. You know what I mean? You're eating like a king. So a King's Disease, it also affects that lower portion of the body. You know what I mean? In the way that, Chadwick was affected by colon cancer. Of course, it's not the same disease. It's just like some type of stones that develop, but I still thought that it was funny because he portrayed a king and he died in Los Angeles just like Biggie died. Biggie is the king of hip hop, you know what I mean? And Pop Smoke died there too in Los Angeles, the city of angels. You know what I'm saying? Tupac died in Las Vegas, but still the West, you know what I mean? And these are just three people whose legacies couldn't be besmirched, people who became larger than life representations for the culture and kings in their own right. So there's just a lot to be drawn from that. So again, rest in peace to Chadwick. He epitomizes autonomy and taking your destiny into your own hands. You know what I mean? Even in the darkness, there's light. He just ascended to a higher form of light. Light encompasses the entire universe. You know what I mean? It permeates the entire universe. And I do mean permeates. Even through you right now, you have Higgs bosons, which are force carriers for mass. You have fermions, like electrons, which are force carriers for the electromagnetic wavelength, along with photons. And they're just different levels of electricity of existence. Nothing is wiped out. There's no such thing as nothing. So universe is energy, light. You know what I mean? So Chadwick is just at a higher, more exotic field of existence when we can't see a touch. But as instruments, us human beings, as spirits in advanced bodies, in spacesuits, we can interact with these forces that we can't see on some level. We're constantly interacting with energy. Our bodies and brains are always on. So we have to learn how to utilize our bodies and minds to become in tune with our purpose and to seize opportunities in a dignified manner. So, well, that was my stream of consciousness. It's still Corona rising. Corona, you know, is the sun. The thing about language is just symbols. I studied alchemy for a couple years. Some people might see it as a dead pseudoscience. The reason I studied it was because I wanted to understand relationships between different phenomenon that are represented by symbols. So to gain basically a certain level of symbol literacy. So when I look at Corona, I see the sun, you know what I mean? And I see awakening. Language is not a coincidence, you know what I mean? It's sometimes you'll find certain tricks with language, it can be totally inverted. And sometimes it's right on the money, you know what I mean? So just got to step into the light and embody what you believe. Keep improving, mastering your craft, and taking the necessary steps towards self-actualization. You can do anything. You know what I mean? Don't underestimate the subconscious's ability to become reality. Okay? Engineer your energy, and until next time, peace.